Yashodanandana Vraja Jana Ranjana Taunatira Vanachari Taunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunjavihari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Kodani Dai Jaya Maya Poshashi, Jaya Kodani Dai Jaya Maya Poshashi. Shri Shikanata Mahaprashashi ki, Shri Tulsinath Maharaj ki, Shri Giridhara Rara ki, Shri Nrsimhade Bhagavan ki, Srila Prabhupada ki. Reading from Prabhupada, your ever well-wisher. Prabhupada was eager to begin construction on his Ramanreti property, and the news from Bombay didn't distract him from his purpose. Every day he would have the devotees hold a Sankirtan procession from the Radha Damodar temple to the property at Ramanreti. He would also go out occasionally to see the site, still nothing more than grass huts, a wire fence, and a small stock of building materials. Subala, the disciple in charge of construction, was slow and reluctant, and Prabhupada sent for Tamal Krishna Goswami to come from Bombay and take charge. Early one morning, Subal left the land at Ramanreti, where he had been staying, and approached Srila Prabhupada on the roof of the Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada said, "I'm having so much difficulty. I don't have time to read. I can't chant my rounds properly. I can't think of Krishna. I'm always thinking of how this constructor is cheating us, or I'm thinking of signing checks for labor and materials. It's just too much. All these things in my mind are stopping me from thinking from Krishna." "Do you think Arjuna was simply meditating on Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra?" Prabhupada replied. "Do you think Arjuna was sitting in yogic trance while on the battlefield Krishna worked? No, he was fighting. He was killing for Krishna. He was thinking of all the soldiers he had to kill for Krishna. Thinking of the checkbook, thinking of the men, thinking of the contractors. This is also like Arjuna's thinking. This is Krishna's service. You should not worry about thinking of Krishna directly. Arjuna wasn't sitting before Krishna in trance, meditating on his form. He was engaged in Krishna's service. Similarly, this is Krishna's service, and you should engage. Your life is full of Krishna's service, and that is very good. As far as possible, Prabhupada engaged each disciple in a certain service according to the particular disciple's psychophysical nature. But everyone had to take up some kind of work for Krishna. Since Prabhupada desired to build a temple in Vrindavan, then whoever would help him do it, whether they were trained or not, or whether it was their tendency or not, whoever had offered him assistance would become very dear to him and to Lord Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So before we start, in the calendar, there's an entry for Bhishma Dev. Today is Bhishmashtami, the appearance anniversary of Bhishma Dev, the grandfather of the Pandavas. Bhishma Dev was the son of Maharaj Shantanu and Ganga Dev. When his father later wanted to marry Satyavati, Bhishma Dev took a vow never to marry, so Satyavati's son could inherit his father's kingdom. He lived in the court of Dhritarashtra, so he felt obligated to take Duryodhana's side in the battle of Kurukshetra. He wanted to see Krishna fight, so he attacked Arjuna very ferociously. Krishna, despite his vow not take up weapons in the battle, Krishna grabbed the wheel of the chariot and attacked Bhishma Dev, thus breaking his own promise to fulfill his pure devotee's desire. Bhishma Dev died on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He lay on a bed of arrows for months, and finally, after instructing Maharaj Yudhisthira on religious principles, he passed away at his own wish in the presence of Lord Krishna. Bhishma Dev is one of the 12 Mahajans, great religious authorities. Bhishma Dev ki. So today we're continuing our study of Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 15, entitled Narada and Angira Instruct King Chitraketu. And it's text 20 and 21. Okay, so I'll do 20 on my own. Tadeva te param jnanam dadami grihagatai gyatmanya binivesham te putrameva tadamyam. When I first came to your home, I could have given you the supreme transcendental knowledge. But when I saw that your mind was absorbed in material things, I gave you only a son who caused your jubilation and lamentation. So this is Angira Muni continuing to speak to Maharaj Chitraketu. So maybe we can do text 23 together, responsibility. But text 21 and 22 I'll do myself, just otherwise it's lots of Sanskrit. Aduna putrinam tapo bhavatai vanubhuyate evam dara griharayo vivitaishvarya sampada shabdatayashta vishayas chala rajya vibhutaya mahirajam balam kosho vrichamatya suhrishjana sarve api surasine me sarvepi surasene me shoka moha payardita shoka moha payardita Gandharva Nagara Prakya Gandharva Nagara Prakya Swapna Maya Manorataha Swapna Maya Manorataha Sarvipi Surasene Me Shokamoha Payardita Gandharvanagara Prakya Swapnamaya Manorata Sarvipi Surasene Me Shokamoha Payardita Gandharvanagara Prakya Swapnamaya Manorata Sarvipi Surasene Me Shokamoha Payardita Gandharvanagara Swapnamaya Manorata Sarvepi Surasene Me Shokamoha Bhayardita Andara Nagara Prakya Sadnamaya Manorata. Um, You're supposed to just do word for that verse, or word for all of it? I found it for me. Sarve, all, happy, indeed, moha, no, sorry, Surasena, O King of Surasena, Ime, peace, Shoka, of lamentation, Moha, of illusion, Bhaya, of fear, Arti, and distress, Daha, givers, Gandharva Nagara Prakya, headed by the illusory sight of a Gandharva Nagara, a big palace within the forest. Swapna, dreams, Maya, illusions, Manorataha, and concoctions of the mind. Translation pop-up by His Divine Grace, H.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. My dear King, now you are actually experiencing the misery of a person who has sons and daughters. O King, owner of the state of Surasen, one's wife, his house, the opulence of his kingdom, and his various other opulences and objects of sense perception are all the same in that they are temporary. One's kingdom, military power, treasury, servants, ministers, friends, and relatives are all causes of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. They are like a Gandharva Nagara, a non-existent palace that one imagines to exist in the forest. Because they are impermanent, they are no better than illusions, dreams, and mental concoctions. Responsibly, please. My dear King, now you are actually experiencing the misery of a person who has sons and daughters. O King, owner of the state of Surasen, one's wife, his house, the opulence of his kingdom, and his various other opulences, and objects of sense perception, are all the same in that they are temporary. One's kingdom, military power, treasury, servants, ministers, friends, and relatives are all causes of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. They are like a Gandharva Nagara, a non-existent palace that one imagines to exist in the forest. Because they are impermanent, they are no better than illusions, dreams, and mental concoctions. Purport. This verse describes the entanglement of material existence. In material existence, the living entity possesses many things. The material body, children, wife, and so on. Deha pacha kalatradishu. One may think that these will give him protection, but that is impossible. In spite of all these possessions, the spirit soul has to give up his present situation and accept another. The next situation may be unfavorable, but even if it is favorable, one must give it up and again accept another body. In this way, one's tribulation in material existence continues. A sane man should be perfectly aware that these things will never be able to give him happiness. One must be situated in his spiritual identity and eternally serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead as a devotee. Angiri Rishi and Narada Muni gave this instruction to Maharaj Chitraketu. Om Jnanatamrandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunritam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Sayanupagadammayam Daranti Swapatantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Siyatapatakamalам Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Radita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Shri Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dino Bando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vinevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Pastita Deshitarine Hare Krishna. I humbly seek the blessings of the assembled Vaishnavas that I'm able to speak some words of relevance to the text and relevance in our devotional lives as well. This is somewhat of a heavy verse because we see now that Maharaj Chitraketu is in a position to hear this heavy philosophy. Right now, it's the same Angira Rishi who's speaking to him, who spoke to him before. Before the great sage knew that Maharaj Chitraketu was in no position to hear that, one's wife, your house, opulence, and other opulences are all temporary, and therefore they're causes of fear, illusion, lamentation, and distress. You have to sometimes let people work that one out for themselves. It's sort of common knowledge within, people who practice some sort of counseling that you can tell someone something, but this is not very effective. The most effective way for them to understand is for them to think they've come up with the idea on their own and then to agree with them. So we see that spiritual life is like this as well. Sometimes people need to come to the platform of realizing actually everything I've been hankering for, everything I've been searching for isn't actually giving me happiness. Therefore they can begin to inquire about the absolute. There's 4 types of pious people who approach Krishna. Arta, Taki, Jigyasu, Gyani, Cha, Paritarsabha. There's those who are distressed is one of the primary reasons people come to spiritual life, especially in this age, because lots to stress about. And when there's so much, it begins to, if you have the right level of piety, intelligence, it makes you question why it is that we're in this situation where it's just, everywhere we go, there seems to be some suffering. Because there's a famous Christian writer, he said, if I can have such a strong desire for something that I can see doesn't exist within this material world, then the only conclusion is that I don't belong here in this material world. The idea that we can see that we're looking for permanent relationships, we're looking for a deep loving connection with someone who, by loving, we're going to become fully satisfied. We're you even see people that they're so scared of getting old because they know that they're not supposed to get old. But they think somehow by manipulating the material energy, they're going to sort of get some sort of panacea, the philosopher's stone or the fountain of youth. Or there's always this wishful thinking that somehow using material nature. Now the same idea is there with previously people before modern society was so scientific. They used to have folk tales like this. It's something sort of material. You take some, you get some blessing, or this sort of the philosopher's stone was a big one, or the elixir of life, elixir of immortality. And by taking this substance, you would, live forever or live for a very long period of time. But that same mentality is still there. Now you see people still believe that somehow using scientific advancements, we're going to, we can perhaps freeze our body, and then when we discover how to cure the diseases, then we can be, defrosted. But I don't even know how badly defrosted vegetables are. Do you really think you're going to survive that defrosting? But it's this sort of complete naivety to think that, somehow the material situation is not perfect at the minute, but in the future it's going to be perfect. And this is a lie. So we're at a situation now where King Chitraketu is ready to hear that, situation is never going to be happy. Um, I guess this verse is nice. It falls on today's Bhishmashtami. Karamba Karama shares. There's one story. I'm not sure of all the details, but basically the gopis are there's some festival, and they're dressing each other up very nicely with pearls. Forgive me, I'm not sure of all the details, but Krishna gets very jealous. He sees them being dressed nicely in pearls. He thinks, "I want some pearls for my cows," and so he goes. He asks, for some pearls, and they say, "Krishna, Shishi Kunataya Ma Prashashiki." Don't be silly. You don't take pearls for the cows, But he's getting quite distraught. He's like, no, I want some pearls. I said, he can't get any pearls, but he says, no, I want them. So I end up to give him like one pearl or something, and he says, this isn't enough. He says, that's all you get. So he gets this pearl, and then he goes and he says, I'll tell you what, I'm going to plant it in the ground, and I'm going to grow some more pearls. I said, this is not how it works. But Krishna goes away, and he plants this pearl in the ground, and he waters it with the milk from his Surabi cows, and then sure enough, a pearl tree grows, because Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead, he can do what he wants. But the analogy was going that similarly with the vows we make at initiation, that these are like pearls. They're very, very rare, and very precious. Our greatest wealth. But if we properly invest in them, if we're hearing and chanting, and we can externally follow them, but to actually properly make them a real focus of our life, on a much more subtle level than just the externals. Then like in Krishna's example, the many, many more pearls come. So, because Prabhupada, it's not stated anywhere in Shastra, it's not in Srimad Bhagavatam, that one should not eat meat, one should not have illicit sex, one should not gamble, and one should not one should not take intoxication. Thank you very much. It's never stated explicitly that way, but what is stated is the principles of religion is austerity, mercy, cleanliness, and truthfulness. But Prabhupada knew that he's coming to the West, he's seeing the state of people. If he says, okay, and you'll take a vow to be truthful and austere and merciful and clean, they feel, okay, that's fine, but like, what does it actually mean to be merciful? To be merciful to every living entity? Like, you need an actual specific standard for people, especially Kali Yuga in the West. We're coming from maybe not so great a background, therefore we might, like before I was a devotee, think it's clean just to having a shower once a day is, well, you're better than everybody else. But the standards are very, very low. So in this way, Prabhupada had to sort of phrase the regulations in the negative, because just to help us, so we know that the standard never to drop below. But nonetheless, we should never see that just as the end goal, just to not take intoxication. But it's that the end goal is that we should. They said intoxication is prevents one developing austerity, because if you're too intoxicated, you can't see the material situation as it is. I always struggle with it, but I heard some examples. It's like you can see someone perhaps like on the. You quite often see it perhaps in Glasgow. People are just wearing practically no clothes. It's freezing. Sometimes you see people wearing big shoes that they can't even walk in, and it's a horrendous situation. But because they're intoxicated, they think that they're having the best time ever. I heard one other example. It's maybe a little bit more harsh, but they do lots of studies in psychology determining how different faces, people judge different faces. So doing some studies to determine what makes a face beautiful. And generally, they sort of found that if they got loads and loads of faces and asked people to judge which face is more beautiful, the ones which are more symmetrical, these ones are considered more beautiful. But then they did some other studies, and they show that when people take intoxication, they are no longer able to properly understand symmetry, because intoxication, it messes up some of the ways that we perceive vision. so that when people take intoxication, it's quite funny actually. It's ironic. They perceive everyone else as more beautiful, and this is how people can having some night out or something, and madly fall in love with someone, and in the morning they instantly regret everything's happened because intoxication, it makes us think the material world's a better situation than it is, and this is the danger, the intense danger of these things. Are very subtle as well. Yeah. So these vows you make, and similarly the instructions from the spiritual master, these are described. These should be like the crown jewel upon our head. The snakes. A snake with a jewel is so much. He becomes very, very proud. He's also more dangerous, but this is what distinguishes him from everyone else, and this is what distinguishes us: is that we've made vows, and we've been given instructions, and we have the opportunity to follow these instructions. And this is actually the supreme rarity, the supreme wealth that we actually have in this life. Because otherwise we'll be in the same situation as Maharaj Chitraketu, who's thinking that one's kingdom, military power, treasury, servants, ministers, friends, and relatives. He thinks these are his protection. He thinks this is what's going to protect him, and it's actually they think he's his source of happiness. Whereas actually, Angira Muni is describing that these are his cause of fear, his cause of illusion, his lamentation and distress. So maybe if there's any questions or comments at the present moment, I'll stop here. Otherwise,
So just at the end of the verse, they're referring to this thing Gandharva Nagara, a non-existent place that one imagines to exist in forest. So then this whole material life is imaginary? Because the Buddhists say that too, don't they? Say it's imaginary. So in imagination, something doesn't exist in imagination. Does that mean this whole thing doesn't exist? It's all just a dream?
It does exist. It's just temporary. What doesn't exist is the idea that it can give us permanent happiness. So the entire material world is an expansion of Krishna's energy, and everything that comes from Krishna, one sense, is non-different from Krishna. Nonetheless, it's a Chinta Beta Beta Tattva that is simultaneously one with and different from the Supreme Lord, and we are Krishna has the Tatashta Shakti refers to. It's described to be like the shoreline, which can either be covered by the water or it can remain uncovered. So similarly, while we're covered with material energy, we're in illusion. But nonetheless, it's Krishna's material energy, and it's seen by the fact that if we surrender unto Krishna, he says, Daiva Hyasya Gunamai Mama Maya Darachayata. On our own, we can't get beyond this material energy, but we surrender unto him, then very easily, very quickly we can get beyond it, because ultimately it's all within Krishna's control. He's in control of everything. The example's given like a snake. People see a rope and think it's a snake. And this is illusion, because a rope is not a snake. But nonetheless, a rope is still a rope, and a snake does exist. So we can see the material world and think this is our source of happiness, and we can control and enjoy here. This is illusion, but nonetheless, the material world does exist, and we can have real happiness in the spiritual world.
Another important point is that even if you were, for argument's sake, to accept that it's an illusion, then who's experiencing that illusion? Who's experiencing that imagination? Because so that counters the voidists thing, nothing exists, which is a bit of a contradiction in terms anyway, because if nothing exists, then just don't say anything. But then the impersonalist as well, because like your imagination and my imagination may imagine things differently. You're experiencing your imagination, I'm experiencing mine. It's not that I imagine something and we all imagine it at the same time. And it seems like the scientists, they also have a similar kind of misunderstanding, because they talk about something called natural selection. So who's selecting? It's like if some living entity is gradually, they say we don't see the changes because it happens over millions of years. So how do we disprove that? It just seems like a bit of a misleading statement. So if that's the case, if reincarnation didn't exist even, then how would natural selection take place? Because you'd have to be there selecting, trying to be something better than you are, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and they can't even explain, because there's an actual mechanism that's required for the for the genome to constantly to mutate, to sort of reproduce itself and mutate, which is necessary for then the random selection, natural selection thing to take place. So they can explain some of they have this idea that, okay, once this exists, then it can replicate and have mutations. But they can't explain how it actually exists in the first place, because that is what's necessary for creating the random mutations. But how did that randomly mutate to come to there? Yeah. But yeah, Krishna throws them into illusion, So, and Krishna's illusion is perfect. So he gives them so many things that they can grasp onto and think explains everything.
Is it not a kind of madness? Because if a madman wants to believe something, even if it's not true, then nobody can convince him otherwise.
It's collective madness, because they self-confirm amongst each other, But yeah, you see certain mental health conditions like schizophrenia, etc. People think that they're the center of the universe, that perhaps the whole government it's quite common, people get very paranoid, think the whole government has a series of spies. You see random people in the street and think, this person's a spy who's out to get me, or there's no way you can actually convince these people that is not the case. Even because it's not working on a logical dimension, so you can sit people down and say, no, listen, no one's out to get you, we're your friends, etc. But that's never going to work. You have to engage the person in some sort of therapeutic treatment, whether it's medicinal or some other sort of counselling, address the real root of the problem, and then their illusion subsides. So similarly, if people are so intoxicated by just trying to deny the existence of God, then to simply just prove it to them is unlikely to be all that effective, because they're so invested in that idea. But if you sort of engage them in some sort of culture purification, then naturally they'll be more inclined to look for it a little bit, because they become less intoxicated. So it's still, Prabhupada is very much wanting us to have scientific research and sort of scientific books, etc. But it seems like these books are effective for those who are already beginning to question if there is a supreme creator. Then they can see, well, this makes sense. It's already in line with some of the scientific understanding I have. And it's also confirmed with supreme creator. Whereas people, if they're completely not looking for a supreme creator, then it's unlikely that by reading a book telling you there is one, that it's actually going to properly have an impact. But even just coming in contact with Prabhupada's books is beneficial as part of the purification.
Thank you, bro. So, a question like on austerities and vows, would it have helped had Vishmadev not continued with his vow and say got married, had children? Possibly would have that helped the kingdom? and would have helped the Pandavas in ruling the kingdom and more maintaining, say, morality and sanctity?
Now this is it's a Deva Vrata. It's such a great vow. That it's described in the Shastra that one can even disobey the orders of the spiritual master in order to remain free from family life. Because it is such a rarity, and it's such a it very much empowers one. And so we see that Bhishma Dev, he's a Mahajan. He's by his example, he's helping many people. That we're still hearing and glorifying about him today. No one hears much and glorifies about other characters in the Mahabharata, like Maharaj Shantanu, his father. Who's you maybe hear his name, but you never take instruction from him. Whereas Bhishma Dev, his potency is still very much there. And this is, perhaps we can see it as like Shreyas versus Preyas, like long term. Initially we think, well, you could give maybe shastric reasons, or moral reasons that you should, you should get married, you should do this just for the sake of the kingdom, etc. But he had the longer term vision, and also. Yeah, it was maybe suiting his nature as well. Like we see Bhishma Dev, when it comes to like moral issues, he can be very much, he follows one particular line. Like in the pastime of Draupadi, it's described that when Draupadi is being disrobed, I think it's described that he was trying to work out, well, is she, rather than seeing the direct situation, he was sort of thinking, well, is she the property of Yudhishthira Maharaj? Therefore, so he was trying to work out the sort of law of the cause and effect. So that's slightly besides the point. I've sort of forgotten. I should have done more research before speaking on this. I've sort of forgotten the pastime explicitly. But yeah, by his example, he's helped so many more people. Prabhupada could have stayed and looked after his family and been a nice family man, but there was some sacrifice there. He was also, and he ended up helping so many more people. So we have to see the bigger picture. If this helps.
Thank you, bro. Another on maintaining vows. One thing is maintaining the vows at gross level. Any advice how to maintain vows on the subtle level as well?
I would humbly request if some of the senior devotees have. It's something I'm perhaps struggling with. If any senior devotees have some advice on the more subtle aspects of these vows.
Well, not that I'm qualified to speak, but what I've heard is the subtle symptoms. Sometimes they're more hidden, except for some who can see them, which is simply like name, fame, adoration, distinction, and gain. So sometimes people can give up chasing the gross things because the subtle things are actually more, they pamper the ego more. So if someone's, they can be very austere, etc., to become famous, to be distinguished. And if our motivation in Krishna consciousness is to distinguish ourselves, like we want to be seen as being the best cook, not that we're trying our best to please the deities and the devotees, but we want to be the best. We want to be known as the best. Or we want to utilize our gifts in such a way as to bring attraction to ourselves as opposed to use it to bring people to Krishna consciousness. That's standing in the way of Krishna consciousness. That's not taking people to Krishna. And gain, if we have some gain in mind, whether that gain be for fame or position, prestige, whatever, and these are more subtle things. And sometimes even people in the so-called renounced So if the spiritual master says, you chant 64 rounds. In the beginning, Prabhupada did ask a devotee to chant 64 rounds, but if someone decides themselves they're going to do it, then that is, it's not prescribed duty. So if it's something which is prescribed duty, that's fine. But if we're going to dictate what we're going to do, then we're not really putting ourselves in a position of being servants. We're dictating, we're dictators, little dictators. Or at least it's conditional. We may be serving the mission in one way or another. And we get the reciprocation according to our level of compliance with the needs and with the with our surrender, as we surrender our reward accordingly. So, and other example is that if the spiritual master says to someone, okay, you should do this, and then they say, but I want to do that because this is a higher thing, then it gets a bit dodgy, because the order of the spiritual master is what is to follow, and one becomes perfect by that. If the spiritual master says, cook for the devotees, that's how they get perfection. If he says distribute books. But of course in ISKCON, it can get a little bit more confusion at times, because there's different authorities saying different things at different times. But the whole kind of subtle thing of it is to question ourselves, why are we doing what we're doing? Even as devotees, are we dressing in a certain way to attract ourselves? Like sometimes you see someone maybe doing something which appears to be devotional service, but if our motivation is to attract someone else's attention to ourselves as opposed to Krishna, then that motivation, we have to question ourselves.
So I'll just share one pastime I heard just very recently from Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, one of his final. I think he actually ended up living for some months longer after this, but when he was giving the class, he sort of making it out it was one of his final classes, and he was very funny actually. He was reflecting on how during some parts of his when he was younger brahmachari, he said he was the most austere eating in all of ISKCON. Just some vegetables, maybe chapati a day. But then it would come to gulab jamun eating competitions, and he would come out top. And he said all the while it was just my ego eating, like whether it was just he was the most austere or the most amount of gulab jamuns. And actually none of it was actually it was. So I guess the intention that we're doing an action with.
Krishna consciousness considered to be a change of heart, so a lot of the externals don't necessarily have to change, it's just our intention behind it. What is our mood? And we can't fake the mood either. We can't just like trying to squeeze a certain type of voice and then we sound sincere. It was interesting. One devotee heard one's so-called sincere kirtan, and he said that it sounds like unqualified sincerity. We can't just mimic sincerity. It has to really be there. And that means some introspection and thinking, not putting ourselves forward as being something better than others.
Yeah, and perhaps finding that, I just know myself, that glimmer of sincerity amongst all the duplicity. So like maybe it's like, okay, I can't pray that I really want Krishna, but then, okay, can I pray that I want Krishna? So then there's some sincerity there, and that's like some, like grounding that you can then build up other sincerity off of. Dr. Prabhu always says the jiva is inherently sincere. It's a pure devotee of Krishna. So underneath everything else, we are sincere. But you just have to remove everything that's insincere.
There's actually there was a conversation, Srila Prabhupada, one devotee was struggling and said, how did it go again? I can't remember verbatim, but he was talking about his own insincerity, and so Prabhupada says, so if you want to be sincere, then be sincere. So the dictionary can help in this regard. If we don't know what sincere means, we look it up and see what it means, and if that's what you want to be, then find out what it takes to be that. Otherwise, we're just fooling ourselves, perhaps. And it's true what you say, that even if we come to the realization that I'm not sincere, then we just pray to the Lord, that I can become sincere, because we know we need to be. Or pray, however many times removed it is from where it needs to be, pray that we can at least get to the next step. Yeah, that was what it was. How do I be sincere? And the answer came back, by being sincere. So the question was like, how do I be sincere without being sincere? That's really what they're saying. We just have to be that. So therefore, if we don't know what it means, then we should look it up and see what it means, or see what it means according to Shastra, the stories that we've got here.
One quick question, Prabhu, if time permits, please. In the previous verse, we see that Angira Muni says that previously King Chitraketu was not in a position to hear the sublime message, say. So Angira Muni benedicted, gave him the benediction, okay, I bless you with a son, you'll have a son. So in our preaching, we find like people are not there. I mean, people are definitely not there, say, to take into Krishna consciousness. So can we go about like helping people or helping some material causes related to environment, food problems, and other causes, women issues? There's so many political issues and all. Can we also go on that front and sow that preach and then somehow help society take into Krishna consciousness?
If you can do that without becoming entangled, then but it's not Prabhupada's instruction. It's not Prabhupada's mood. Prabhupada's mood is that we're in a battle right now, and just by any means, just get people to come to this platform. You give someone a Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't matter they're not looking for a Bhagavad Gita. You speak to them for as short as time as possible. You find out what they actually want. Is this person stressed? Does this person want some loving relationship? Is this person looking for some wealth? And then you present the Bhagavad Gita in a way to attract it to them, and then they have Prabhupada's book, and then their material life is slowly finishing. We don't go around trying to, because there's so many jivas, so many people just in desperate need of help, and there's very few devotees, and our time is short, so we cannot mess around. So this is okay. Okay, let's stop here. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Anantakoti Vaishnavrinda ki.
Pancha Tattva Prabhu ki.